12 years lost in the Sinister Woods. The terrifying return of a haunting figure exposed to the whispers in Pine Hollow had a name. Mr. Grimshaw. 12 years vanished like smoke, leaving nothing but fearful glances and chilling anecdotes threading through the town like ghostly fingers. Children spoke of him in hushed tones. But what if the tales held a truth so dark it could suffocate you? What if he was back? Sarah's heart raced as her mind teetered on the edge, contemplating the shadows creeping just beyond her backyard, the Sinister Woods. She brewed coffee in her tiny kitchen, the aroma an attempt to mask the overwhelming stench of grief and desperation. Since her husband's car accident, life had morphed into a suffocating downward spiral. The weight of raising her two children, 10-year-old Max and 8-year-old Lily, pressed relentlessly on her shoulders. And now the kids had been whispering secrets about the woods as shadows danced in the fading light. Max had said someone called his name, as if the wind itself conspired to lure him away. Lily's terrified eyes still flickered with the sight of something lurking just beyond the fence. The atmosphere thickened when Sarah overheard the neighbors buzzing. Mr. Grimshaw had come back, like a nightmare resurrected. The disquiet nestled deep within her. That same dread weighed heavily on every lawnmower hum and childish laughter that filled the air. Nothing was as innocent as it seemed. Stories began to bubble to the surface, tales of missing children, of broken families, of whispers that led them right into the woods, never to return. She could feel the tremors of panic creeping up her spine, a primal fear jabbering in her ears, urging her to protect her little ones. Before she could shake these thoughts away, an unsettling quiet blanketed her home. An emptiness swallowed it whole. She rushed upstairs and found Max's bed unmade, his blankets thrown aside. Fear clawed at her throat. "Max!" she screamed, her voice echoing back in eerie silence. Outside, the trees swayed and murmured, each rustle a beckoning call. "Come find me, come find us." Sarah's instincts screamed for her to run away from the woods, from Pine Hollow, from whatever had taken residence in her life. But dread settled like cement in her stomach. She felt out of options, but not out of hope. Determination surged. Grabbing her phone, she enlisted a band of local teens, including Lily's best friend, and a disgraced former cop who knew the area better than he cared to admit. A motley crew, all armed with flashlights and a gut full of fear as they dared each other to step into the darkness. As they crossed the threshold into Sinister Woods, prickers snagged at their clothes. The air thickened. It tasted like decay and despair. Every shadow felt alive, watching, studying them as they ventured deeper into the murky depths. Shattered altars revealed themselves, hidden beneath creeping vines, remnants of rituals best left forgotten. A disquieting hum surrounded them, every crunch of leaves echoing loudly against their terror-stricken souls. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as they began to uncover the truth about their seemingly perfect neighborhood, an abrupt snap rang out a twig, splitting the air like a gunshot. The shadows shifted, swirling around them as a chilling wind began to howl. Heartbeats raced. A figure emerged, cloaked in darkness but unmistakably familiar. Had Mr. Grimshaw returned? Or was this something far more sinister? The moment hung, pregnant with dread, leaving Sarah's heart racing and her mind screaming, was he coming for her son? Or was he merely a pawn in a more terrifying game that led right back to her front door? The figure stepped forward, revealing a gaunt face, eyes sunken and soulless. Panic surged through Sarah as the memories of whispered warnings from years past crashed into her mind. Mr. Grimshaw, was he a ghost or worse, a living nightmare? Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but the steady presence of her team bolstered her spirit. The former cop, Derek, raised his flashlight, its beam cutting through the dense shadows, illuminating the twisted branches overhead like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. Stay close, he barked, his voice a harsh blend of command and fear. The kids clutched each other, their wide eyes darting back and forth between the figure and the darkened woods. Sarah could hear her breath short, sharp gasps that punctuated the heavy silence. The air thickened with unresolved tension, as if the woods themselves held their breath with them. What are you? Sarah managed to whisper, her voice trembling. The figure tilted its head, a chilling smirk curling across its lips. I am the echo of what you fear most. It rasped, each word like shards of ice skimming her skin. You should have stayed away. The woods remember. They always remember. The echo of those words settled in Sarah's gut like lead. The woods remembered. What had happened here? She thought of all the stories and the children who had disappeared. Max, was he one of them? An icy grip clamped around her heart as a potential answer loomed. This woods had never forgotten the lives it had consumed. Step back, Derek shouted as the figure took a bold step forward, its movements unnaturally fluid. Just then, a gale swept through the clearing, howling like a banshee. Leaves swirled violently, and Sarah barely held onto Lily and Max's friend, Jess. In the chaos, a sickening rustle came from the underbrush, and from the thicket emerged a chilling sight: 13 indistinct shapes, vaguely childlike. They were moving slowly, their forms shadowy and distorted, like memories refusing to fade. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as dread wrapped around her lungs, making it hard to breathe. The kids stood frozen, caught between their unspeakable terror and a morbid curiosity as they stared at the null silhouettes. One step. Just one step towards them, and the weight of despair flooded Sarah's senses. Max, she shouted, the name tearing through her throat like a knife. A desperate plea laced with fear. We have to find him. We have to go. But as she turned, a figure blocking their path hunched down lower, its gaze fixed on Sarah's trembling form. A twisted smile widened, and from the lips of the creature came a voice thick with malice. Why would you leave? The game has just begun, dear Sarah. The sense of the woods engulfed them, the ancient trees whispering dark secrets, their branches curling like claws. The children beside her shifted uneasily, gripping tighter, as if the air itself thickened with the souls of the lost. Sarah could feel a pull, an ancient call drawing her toward those spectral children. Stand firm. Derek helped steady the group, shining his light fiercely towards the oncoming shapes. But the beam flickered, casting wavering shadows that danced like phantoms. In that heartbeat, Sarah's mind raced. What was the truth? Were these lost souls companions or traps? Grit and fear ignited deep within her. If they wanted her son, she would fight back. But would they only come for him, or for all of them? As the shadows converged, Sarah took a stealing breath, resolve hardening. We bring him back, she declared, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. We will find him, no matter what. But the echoes of the woods seemed to laugh, a mocking sound that promised suffering. Just as they prepared to plunge deeper into darkness, a voice echoed in the recesses of her mind. Will they allow it? The answer remained suspended in the very trees they stood upon. A flicker of hope ignited within her chest, but dread pulled, and the shadows whispered louder. The weight of fate hung thick over them. What will they demand of us? Sarah's mind whispered, in horror, and just like that, darkness clawed closer, leaving them unmoored and desperate. The stakes were higher than they'd imagined, and the game had morphed into a nightmare that felt all too real. What would her bravery cost? With a heavy heart, she pushed forward into the chaos, knowing the woods were hungry. Now more than ever, their collective survival relied on confronting the unutterable truths lurking within. But would they ever escape now that the game had truly begun? Adrenaline coursed through Sarah's veins as they moved, limbs stiff, hearts racing. The chilling figures shifted closer, their movements irritable and unnaturally smooth like dark oil slipping over water. Don't look away, Derek shouted, but his voice trembled, revealing his own uncertainty. Max, where are you? Sarah's heart twisted, echoing with desperation. A sickening thought gripped her. What if they were too late? What if the woods had already claimed him? The gaunt figure laughed again, a sound that rattled Sarah's bones. Your weak will binds you here, Sarah. Fight the inevitable. The woods hunger and they are patient. As they edged further into the shadows, the air thickened. Every breath felt heavier, filled with the sense of decay and damp earth. The whispers grew louder, unintelligible murmurs that sounded like the lost children calling out for help, drawing them deeper into the forest. Panic swelled in Sarah's chest. Get a grip, Derek yelled, as if to rouse them from a trance. But his flashlight flickered, casting long, wavering shadows that morphed into monstrous figures reaching for them. Each flicker of light revealed what they'd rather not see, a glimpse of anguished faces, eyes pleading and familiar. She thought she recognized a boy from her neighborhood, a child who had vanished years ago. Were you lost too? Jess whispered, her voice barely audible. Don't listen to them, Derek warned, fierce yet frantic. They're illusions, mere tricks of the woods. But Sarah felt the pull grow stronger, a magnetic force that tugged her towards the murky throng. Max, she yelled again, desperation breaking through her composure. We're here for you. We won't leave without you. At that moment, a spine-chilling wail erupted from the darkness, echoing through the trees, rattling branches and shaking leaves. The unmistakable sound of a child sobbing. Hope clawed at Sarah's heart and squeezed it. What if it was Max? But with each wavering step, doubt intricately wove itself with hope. Which way? Lily cried, her face pale and drawn. The phantoms danced around them, closing in, smirking, ever so slowly, as if to enjoy their growing despair. The woods loomed, a silent spectator to their torment, hungry for their confusion. Follow the sound, Sarah commanded, her voice tremulous yet determined. The team hesitated, fear written across their faces. Yet, they pressed on, pushed by an instinct deep within an instinct to rescue. As they zigzagged through the dense underbrush, branches grasped at their clothing like skeletal hands trying to drag them back. Just as they pushed forward, a sudden cracking noise paused their movement. Something was snapping, tearing through the darkness like a fireworks aftermath. Something's coming, Derek exclaimed, panic evident in his eyes. In a flash, the shadows solidified, morphing into a veritable wall of lost faces impossible to ignore. They were here, hanging in sorrowful silence, blending with the shadows. Each seemed to hold a story, unspeakable yet vivid, the weight of all that had been stolen pressing in on them like an unbearable cloak. Why are you here? A voice crooned from behind the wall of darkness. It was soft, but there was a chilling authority in the way it resonated within them. What will you give to find your lost child? Sarah's heart sank. They were being watched, scrutinized, judged by the legacy of those who never returned. Fear and desperation collided within her, creating a furious storm of uncertainty. I'll trade anything, she shouted, her voice breaking. But the shadows laughed again, writhing like smoke before her. Is that so? The voice replied, twisted delight threading through its tone. Then what of your truths? What sacrifices will you offer to appease the woods? A cold sweat dripped down Sarah's neck as dread coiled around her spine. It dawned on her the answers resided within their darkest fears. To save Max, they would have to confront the very essence of what they had buried. Stay together. Derek's command was stronger now, but the laughter echoed above the trees. What would the woods demand of them? And would the price be too steep for even a mother's love? The shadows shifted, forming an impenetrable barrier as they pressed closer, leaving Sarah with the sinking realization that every truth revealed could lead them deeper into the game. A chance of salvation hung on a thread. Would they survive the darkness? Or were they destined to become just another echo in the woods? The question loomed heavy in the air, a silent challenge challenging them to find the answer before it was too late. The forest closed in, each breath feeling like a struggle against an unseen force. Shadows danced on the periphery of their vision, flickering like candle flames. They were no longer alone. The chilling laughter surged, echoing through the warped trees, enveloping them in gloom. What do we do? Jess whispered, her voice thin, almost swallowed by the darkness. Sweat trickled down her forehead, her expression a mix of determination and terror. "Keep moving," Derek insisted, though his voice quavered as he flicked the flashlight back and forth, searching desperately for a sign of Max. "We can't let them find our weaknesses." But the shadows seemed to know better, probing their fears with silken whispers. "Derek, it knows," Sarah murmured, a shiver racing down her spine. "It can feel our fear." Without warning, the darkness thickened around them, swirling like a storm. A hand, cold and clammy, suddenly grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her back. She gasped, the icy grip wrapping around her wrist like a steel vice. "Sarah!" Derek shouted, lunging forward. The figure that emerged was indistinct but horrifically familiar. It wore the face of a friend long gone, lips pulled back into a cruel grin. "You sought to find him, but what if he doesn't want to be found?" The specter taunted, its voice a sickening blend of sweetness and malice. Behind it, more faces gathered, emerging from the shadows. Children's faces, weeping, pleading, and among them, the hollow gaze of Max. Sarah's heart lurched, aching with both hope and dread. "No, Max, I will find you," she screamed, her voice breaking the silence. The laughter crescendoed, drowning her words. The wind howled through the towering trees, mocking her desperation. With the horrifying realization that each apparition was a part of Max's lost innocence, she felt herself teeter on the edge of despair. They were drawing them in, tightening the noose with each passing moment. "Close your eyes," Derek screamed, his determination fleeting. "It's a trick. Just focus on Max." But how could she? The faces shone with lost hope, their wails ricocheting off the bark like arrows, each one a reminder of suffering beyond belief. Sarah felt her knees buckle, the weight of their sorrow anchoring her in place. "Sarah, please," Jess cried, tears glistening in the flickering light, desperation crinkling her brows. "We can't get pulled in. Remember why we're here." Suddenly, the wailing intensified around them, melding into a cacophony that rattled her bones. It echoed sinister truths, each haunting note clawing at her sanity, each whisper a reminder of what they had lost. What would she give to bring Max back? Would she sacrifice her own existence? "Enough!" Sarah yelled, forcing her voice to rise above the chaos. "I will not be what you want me to be. You don't own our fear." The shadows recoiled, shivering as if struck. The faces faltered, confusion flickering in their eyes. But was it enough? Derek grabbed her arm, his grip firm. "We can't let them win," he said, frantic resolve sparking between them. "We have to find him. Together." In a rush, Sarah squeezed Derek's hand tightly. The warmth of human connection felt like a lifeline in the suffocating dark. She turned to Jess, who nodded, chin lifted defiantly, while Lily clutched Derek's other arm, fear stripped away by resolve. But then, a low rumble rolled through the woods, a tremor beneath their feet that began to separate them, pulling at the fabric of their unity. The shadows dashed towards them, hungry and pulsing. They needed to move. But which way? The sobs echoed all around, drawing them into the depths of horror. What if they became lost too? Dread pooled in Sarah's stomach as she looked back over her shoulder. "Max, we're coming," she called one last time, her voice wavering like an ember in the wind. But would it reach him? The trees seemed to lean in closer, creating an oppressive atmosphere thick with despair. Could they even find him before it was too late? Suddenly, the ground shifted, a chasm opening below them as the shadows swirled into chaos. All at once, an insatiable roar erupted from within the forest. A beast awakened from ancient slumber. "Run!" Derek shouted, but where? The chase had begun. Only this time the hunters were the hunted. What lurked behind them might be more than they could fathom, and they had to know if they could outrun their own nightmare. What awaited them in the depths of the woods? Would they escape, or would they become part of the forest's ghastly tale? They sprinted through the underbrush, branches clawing at their clothes, roots snatching at their feet. The roar faded into an ominous silence, leaving only the sound of their heavy breathing and the thrum of their pounding hearts. Sarah could feel the shadows closing in behind them, a suffocating mist creeping along the ground, hungry for the warmth of their bodies. Which way? Jess gasped, her eyes wide with panic as she scanned the darkness. The trees twisted around them, a maze that seemed to shift with every frantic step. I don't know, Derek admitted, fear clawing at his throat. Just keep moving. We can't stop. The suffocating silence was occasionally sliced by a soft whisper, like rustling leaves caught in a breeze. But it felt all wrong, too deliberate, too purposeful. Sarah squeezed Derek's hand tighter, their connection a fragile thread against the chaos. Lily stumbled, her foot catching on a gnarled root. Derek immediately turned, going back to help her. Come on, we have to go, he urged, pulling her up as the shadows crept closer. Panic gripped Sarah. They couldn't afford to waste time. She turned to look back, eyes wide, heart racing. We can't slow down. The weight of despair loomed, each moment stretching painfully as the darkness expanded, the whispers growing more insistent. I can't breathe, Lily gasped, her face pale, her breath coming out in shallow bursts. The forest around them seemed to inhale too, each rustling leaf drawing the very air from her lungs. Stay with us, Jess shouted, her voice a lifeline. You have to fight it. A fierce wind whipped through the trees, swirling leaves and dirt into a vortex that stung their skin. It was a raging entity, a monster in itself. Just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, leaving a hollow echo in its wake, and the shadows darted closer, and closer still, hungry for the fallen. Max, we're coming for you, Sarah screamed, but the dread that settled in her gut was heavy. What if he didn't want saving? What if he was content in this nightmare? No, Sarah, Derek shouted suddenly, halting her thoughts. Don't call for him. Remember what it showed us. What if their very hope was the thing that drew the darkness in closer? But it was too late. A piercing scream echoed off the trees, so close it felt as if it was coming from right beside her. Max, she cried again, desperation spilling over the edge of fear. The howl morphed into laughter, a cruel, mocking laughter that swallowed their cries for help. Just keep running. Derek's voice broke her from the trance. They pushed forward, but dread pooled around their feet like quicksand. Each step felt heavier than the last. The forest pulsed with life, and they were the prey. They burst into a small clearing, moonlight flooding the space. But there was no solace here. The shadows twisted like effigies, their forms evoking shapes from their memories. Friends, family, all staring and grinning with that same haunting malice. Sarah fought to keep her thoughts clear. She couldn't let fear take control. We can't stop. We can't. Derek looked around, eyes wild. Over there. He pointed as he spotted a crumbling stone structure, half hidden by weeds and darkness. We can hide, regroup, figure out our next move. As they rushed toward it, the climbing shadows shrieked, their voice a chorus of all the lost souls they had come to encounter. Would they slide into despair and join their ranks? But just as they reached the threshold, a figure stepped into the moonlight. Familiar, haunting. Max stood there, eyes void of emotion. Help me, he whispered, but his voice was not his own. That same sweet malice echoed back to them. Everything suddenly stilled. The breath caught in Sarah's chest. What now? Did they trust him? Or was this another trap? Another trick orchestrated by the unyielding darkness? The shadows surged forward with relentless hunger. Flickering like flames caught in a gust, they recoiled, forming a wall behind them. Max? Sarah whispered, dread wrapping around her like dark vines. And as she met his gaze, a sickening realization unfurled. In her mind, some scars could never be healed. Could they save him before it was too late, or would they be drawn into the abyss alongside him? Max's features twisted into an agonizing smile, yet his eyes were hollow, void of the boy they once knew. Tendrils of shadow curled around him, almost caressing. Sarah shivered, feeling the cold seeping into her bones. Don't trust him, Derek shouted, yanking Sarah back. This isn't our Max. But even as she tried to obey, her gaze remained fixed on that false semblance of hope. Memories flooded in Max's laughter, his warmth, the playful banter between friends. It felt like drowning, suffocating under a torrent of memories mixed with dread. "Help me please," Max repeated, each word a sweet poison. The air thickened, a concoction of panic and despair. Behind him, the shadows surged, reaching out with greedy hands, aching to consume. "We can't save him," Jess screamed, eyes wild. "He is not himself. It's a trick." A flicker of doubt gnawed at Sarah. Derek was right. They had seen it before. The forest played on their worst fears, twisting everything they loved into grotesque parodies. "Max, fight it!" Sarah yelled, hope clawing its way back to her throat. "You can come back with us." The shadows writhed, hissing and chuckling, mocking her desperate pleas. Beneath their laughter, she thought she heard a deeper sound, like countless voices whispering secrets just beyond comprehension. Max's smile faltered, if only for a moment, and in that crack, Sarah saw a flicker of the boy she loved. It sent a jolt through her like a lightning strike. Was it enough to pull him back? Or would it send him deeper into the darkness? "Come to me," he rasped, his tone shifting to something sharp and dark, almost serpentine. The very ground beneath him began to twist. Roots slithered forth, reaching for her, dragging Lily and Jess back with unnatural strength. "Run! Don't look back!" Derek shouted, pushing her away. His eyes were filled with a wild desperation that sent a tremor of fear through her heart. "Get to the structure." The shadows surged, a tide of living darkness, and instinct took over. They tore away from Max, taking off towards the crumbling stone building. Each step was a battle against the clinging darkness that seemed to whisper promises of despair and hopelessness. Sarah glanced back, catching sight of Max. His body distorted, shifting like smoke. He reached for her, fingers elongated, stretching beyond human. "Help me." He howled again, but this time it wasn't soft or pleading. It was a horrifying mix of pain and fury. Derek yanked the door open, and they stumbled inside, the world outside turning chaotic with shadows clawing at the stone walls. A breathless moment of relief washed over them, but it was fleeting. "This can't hold them for long," Derek panted, eyes scanning their surroundings. The walls were cold, damp, and ancient. Shadows seeped through cracks like ink spilled on parchment. Sarah pressed her back against the wall, feeling the chill seep into her. "What do we do now? We can't just leave him." "Leave him?" Jess glanced at her, incredulous. "He is not in there anymore. Sarah, whatever that is, it's not our Max. No, we can't lose hope." The heat of desperation flared in Sarah's chest. "I can feel him. He is still in there. Somewhere." Lily's breaths were shallow. "But what if we lose ourselves trying to save him?" Her eyes darted toward the shadows forming at the doorframe, little by little inching closer, eager to swallow them whole. "It's too late for that," Derek said, his voice steady as he pulled a broken piece of stone. "If we're ever going to get him back, we have to force this thing out." A rumble echoed in the darkness, vibrating the walls. The shadows twisted angrily, voices rising again, a cacophony of lost souls howling. Would they be next? They huddled closer, the air electric with fear. Outside, a chant began, haunting a rhythm of despair that seeped into their souls. The door rattled, shadows crashing against it, as if the forest itself wanted retribution. "Together, on three, we push back." Derek's voice was a lifeline, a rallying cry against the inevitable. But as he spoke, Sarah felt a tremor in her heart, a creeping doubt. What if the shadows were right? What if they became all too lost, consumed by the very thing they hoped to destroy? Could they win this fight, or was it too late for both Max and themselves? The shadows crashed into the door, a whirlwind of darkness that clawed at their sanctuary. Sarah's heart raced, each thud a reminder of how fragile their moment of safety was. She pressed her palms against the cold stone, feeling the vibrations seep through her skin. "What do we do?" she gasped, her voice trembling. Derek's features were chiseled with sharp determination. "We need to focus. On three." Her eyes darted to Jess and Lily, their faces pale and terror-stricken. "What if he is gone? What if we're just making things worse? Jess whispered, eyes wide, begging for some shred of hope. No, Derek shouted, rallying the group. If we stop believing, we've already lost. A violent tremor shook the building. The shadows screeched, and for a moment, the sound morphed into a chilling cry that mimicked Max's. Pierced Sarah's mind like a dagger. Her resolve faltered. Please help me, the voice wailed from outside, and she staggered, her breath hitching in her throat. It wasn't just Max. It was the echoes of every lost soul the forest had devoured. 3. Derek yelled, and they lunged toward the door, the broken stone raised like a weapon. The impact sent a shockwave through the wood. It groaned in protest, splintering against the sheer force of their desperation. The shadows recoiled, but only for a heartbeat. Scratches and pounding returned, drowning out their chance of hope. Push harder, Derek grunted, his body straining against the weight of despair. Sarah could feel it too, the grasping fingers of the darkness. The whispers grew louder, secrets of the forest wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. Every moment spent fighting felt like an unholy betrayal against the boy they cherished. But then, it happened. Within the commotion, a flicker of light caught her eye from a cracked window. It wasn't much, a broken shard glinting through the shadows, but it sparked something deep within her. Wait, she yelled, pointing. We need to get to the light. Lily gasped, the panic melting from her eyes. The light, it can save him. Exactly. But we have to move now, Derek shouted, the stone slipping from his grasp. They pivoted away from the door, no longer a barrier but a mere obstacle to their next chance. But as they rushed toward the fractured light, the whispers escalated, weaving through the air like serpents. Turn back. They hissed in unison. He belongs to us now. No, Sarah cried, determination flaring in her chest. She pressed forward, pulling her friends along, each of them stumbling through the growing despair. They could feel the cold breeze carrying the echoes of lost souls, a chorus of agony that rose and fell like a dark tide. Don't listen, Jess shouted, breaking through the chaos, the strength in her voice rallying them. We can't give in. They reached the window's edge, clambering over uneven stones. Light poured through, illuminating their faces in stark relief against the encroaching dark. Max! Sarah yelled, as the shadows licked at her heels, trying to drag her back. We're coming. But just as she leaned forward, the window shattered completely, a web of glass spraying out in a glistening arc. And then she saw it, a figure flitting through the darkness just beyond, both familiar and alien. It was Max, or what was left of him, his form twisting in the shadows as he turned toward them with that same agonized smile, now grotesquely widened. Help me, please. It didn't sound like Max anymore. It was a plea laced with malice, a scream that sent icy fingers grasping her heart. No, get back. Don't go near him, Derek yelled, his grip tightening on her arm. But Sarah's feet felt heavy, anchored by the chilling gaze of the figure in the dark. Suddenly, the shadows beneath them surged, wrapping around their ankles, chilling them to the bone. In that moment, Sarah felt fear grip her throat. The forest held too many secrets, each one more terrifying than the last. Sarah, stay with us, Jess screamed, her face pale, eyes glistening with terror. But Sarah couldn't look away from Max or whatever remained of him. As the shadows pressed closer, closing in like a vice around them, Sarah realized their fight was only beginning. What would they have to sacrifice to rescue Max from the hungry void? The answer hung palpably in the air, thick as the encroaching darkness, the true cost of love in a forest of nightmares. The shadows tightened around them, relentless, choking off any semblance of light. Sarah felt the cold tendrils snaking around her, pricking her skin like icy needles. She fought to turn back, to run, but the memory of Max's twisted smile held her in place. Get to the light, Derek shouted again, desperately pulling at her arm. The panicked sounds of her friends faded into a muffled chant in her ears, their lives fracturing into shadows of their own. Max, Sarah murmured, her voice barely a whisper. Was it truly him? The familiar features, now contorted, beckoned her closer. A siren song that lured her deeper into the darkness. "Don't look at him, Sarah." Jess tugged at her collar, fear dancing in her eyes. But it played like distant music, drowned out by the desperate waves of despair washing over them. The glass shards crunched beneath their feet, glimmering like stars against the concrete. But the stars turned wretched under the dark spell of the woods. Each one whispered secrets, every cut from the glass infused with their fear and torment. Suddenly, the shadows lurched forward, a collective ferocity that sent shockwaves through the air. Derek pushed against the dark, shoving Sarah and Jess behind him. "We can't let them take you too," he roared, strength belying desperation as he braced himself, muscles taut. A distant echo taunted them. "You have to come back." Sarah, the voice was twisted smooth yet jagged, a grotesque mockery of Max's. A chill danced down her spine, reminding her of everything they stood to lose. "Run!" Derek yelled again, but the words hung heavy, fighting against the echoes and the shadows that wrapped around them like a blanket of despair. "No, we can't leave him," Sarah protested, her heart warring with reason. The weight of loyalty pressed against her like a physical thing. "He needs us." The forest trembled, and with it, the walls around them began to pulse and shift. A looming dread climbed higher, thick and suffocating. A horrifying realization dawned. The walls were alive, feeding off their fear. "Stay close," Jess shouted, her knuckles white against the stone as they scrambled towards the window, their only glimmer of escape. It lay just ahead like a lighthouse in a storm, but the shadows were swarming, dark phantoms clawing for all they were worth as they sprinted. Sarah's thoughts raced. How was this happening? Was Max really lost to them? The memories of laughter, sunshine, and friendship clashed violently with the grotesque figures they now faced. "Help me, please." That voice echoed again, dangerously close, laced with layers of unsettling familiarity and something otherworldly. It wasn't just Max, but 100 voices woven together, each claiming her, demanding her attention. "Stop it." Derek slammed his palm against a wall, his eyes wild. "You're not Max. You're just a shadow, a lie." The air thickened with their fear, suffocating and almost tangible. Sarah felt it coiling tighter. "We're so close we can't fail now," she whispered. Suddenly, a heavy wind blasted through the window frame, sending glass flying, cutting through the air like a swarm of angry bees. Sarah shielded her eyes, feeling the cold shards sting her skin. They were almost free, but before they could leap through the shattered opening, a deep rumbling sound roared, shaking the very ground beneath them. "Turn back." The shadows hissed, the sound like 1,000 tortured souls gasping for breath. "Hold on." Derek's voice was fierce, commanding them to keep the fight alive. "We can't let this end like this." With a final push, they lunged toward the light, but the ground began to shift beneath them. The forest was awakening, stirring with a hunger that sent chills down their spines. Was this the end, or just the beginning of their torment? The questions loomed, heavy and suffocating, as they hurtled into the light, leaving behind noise and chaos. What lay beyond would dictate their fate, entwined with the forest's dark heart and Max's true nature. Would they be able to save him, or would they find themselves as prisoners of the shadow? The moment they burst through the glass-strewn window, Sarah stumbled into a world that felt like a fever dream. Blinding light surrounded them, illuminating their faces with a harsh clarity that highlighted their fear, their desperation. The shards of glass glimmering behind them faded into darkness, creating a stark contrast with the brightness of the strange glade they had entered. "Is everyone okay?" Derek gasped, his voice rasping like gravel. His eyes darted around, searching for threats in the thick underbrush. Jess pushed herself up, brushing bits of glass from her jacket. "Where are we? This isn't right." Her voice trailed off into a breathless murmur, swallowed by the silence surrounding them. The air felt thick and charged, as if a storm was brewing just beyond the horizon. Each gust of wind carried a scent they couldn't place fingers of decay, perhaps, but it smelled wrong, as if the very earth beneath their feet was rotting. "Max!" Sarah called out instinctively, a whimper escaping her lips before she could stop it. She wasn't sure if he had followed them or if the darkness had consumed him completely. The forest trembled around them, and then the ground morphed underfoot, shifting like quicksand. Roots and vines seemed to slither forth from the soil, creeping toward them with an unnatural hunger. "Move!" Derek shouted, grabbing Sarah's wrist, pulling her forward. They sprinted through the glade, the light wavering like a faulty lantern. Shadows followed them closely, gnawing at the edges of their vision. A flash of movement caught Sarah's eye, a figure darting between the trees. Her heart raced, blending anxiety with hope. Was it Max? Derek! Wait! She strained to halt him, but he didn't budge. Jess looked back, and fear ignited in her gaze. "We can't lose each other. We have to stick together," Jess yelled, her voice trembling as they stumbled deeper into the unknown. But it was too late. The earth convulsed, and the trio felt the landscape shift around them, a pulse resonating like a heartbeat in the ground. "Watch out!" Jess cried just as roots erupted from the soil, snagging at their legs. Each tendril seemed alive, writhing with a malignant energy. "Split up!" Derek shouted, releasing Sarah as he tore off to his left. "No!" Sarah screamed, but the shadows swallowed him whole. Panic surged. Sarah turned to Jess, but her friend was already edging away, fear dragging her towards the thicker woods. "We have to find him," Sarah begged, yearning for their connection. "Max, help me!" Jess's plea echoed into an empty silence, then faded as she was consumed by the dark, a shroud of twigs and leaves swallowing her whole. Alone now, Sarah felt the shadows pressing in, each heartbeat thudding louder in her ears, drowning out the whispers of the forest closing in around her. She was back in the heart of it, that same dread gripping her like a vice. A roar erupted from behind her, resonating through the trees. The echoes of a rage that felt familiar and terrifying. Sarah's feet moved, but her mind was trapped in a loop of despair. This wasn't just about finding Max or Jess anymore. It was about survival. The ground twisted. Roots clutched at her ankles, urging her down. "Why are you running, Sarah?" The voice chilled her. It lingered in the air, twisting memories of laughter into something grotesque. "You know I won't let you leave." Panic surged, forcing her forward, but the weight of the voice wrapped around her throat, constricting her breath. "You can't escape me with one desperate move." She tore through a thicket, her heart pounding, racing toward a sliver of light peeking through the trees ahead. But what if it was another trap? She stumbled into the clearing, breathless and terror-stricken, only to freeze at what lay before her. The shadows didn't follow. They halted just outside the glade, forming a barrier. In the center of the clearing stood a twisted figure. Max. Or something that used to be him. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice swathed in darkness. "You came back for me," and then, as if on cue, the shadows surged forward, hungry to consume what was left of her heart. Was he beckoning her into the throat of darkness, or had he truly become the vessel for something more sinister? The final understanding of that twisted reality hung in the air like a noose, tightening as she prepared for the worst. "Max?" she whispered, trembling on the edge of hope and despair, dread pooling in her stomach. "Is it really you?" But before she could even take a step toward him, the ground beneath her cracked wide open, threatening to swallow her whole. What had she unleashed, and would she ever escape if she couldn't even trust her own eyes? The ground gaped, shadows began to swirl, and her choices just became deadly. The searing darkness deepened, gnawing at Sarah's resolve as she stood at the precipice of the unknown. Panic mixed with determination as she felt her heart race, a warrior's charge against the tide of despair. The echoes of the woods taunted her, their whispers clawing through her mind, memories, fears, and horrors that lurked just beyond her grasp. "Max!" she cried out, desperation weaving through her voice. "Please, I'm here." Shadows shifted, swirling ominously around the familiar figure, but his form seemed to flicker like a dying light bulb, an illusion flitting between the child she loved and a ghastly parody made flesh. "Sarah," it came out as a groan, a raspy breath coated in malice, and an unbidden tremor ran through her bones. Was he still in there somewhere, or had the woods devoured him whole? The shadows scattered, and the ground opened wider, threatening to inhale her into the very darkness that sought her son. "Help me," his voice echoed sweetly, yet beneath it lay a dark melody of despair. Torn between hope and fear, Sarah took a tentative step forward, each movement weighed down by uncertainty. "Max, listen." She couldn't afford to succumb to the shadows encroaching upon the fringes of the light. "You have to fight it. You can come back to us." But just as she spoke, the tendrils of darkness lunged closer, like hungry snakes drawn back to strike. The twisted grin on the phantasm of Max widened, and all too suddenly that mischievous glint vanished, replaced by a void that froze her blood. "Why would you choose them? They won't help you." "No." Sarah's voice came out sharper this time, infused with a groundbreaking determination. "You can't have him." That determination thrummed in her veins, electric and unyielding. For every shadow that danced close, she felt an emergence, an awakening of something potent within her. Derek's face erupted in her mind as if in response to her fiery spirit. Together, he had shouted amid the chaos, each word a lifeline anchored in their shared fears. And so, tightening her fists, Sarah forced herself to remember the love she held for her son, the laughter they used to share, the dreams they'd yet to fulfill. "Max, you are not lost," she bellowed, her voice cutting through the labyrinth of shadows wrapping around them. "I refuse to leave you. Not now, not ever." A sudden shift in the atmosphere struck like a thunderclap. The cloak of shadows recoiled, hesitating, as if weighing her words against the darkness that longed to consume. Max's form flickered again, shadows fighting for dominance, glimpses of the boy trying to break free. She walked forward, willing herself to close the gap, pressed against the crushing force of the whispers that raged around them. "Fight back," she urged, her heart pounding in sync with the thunderous whispers swirling. "You've always been stronger than this." With a defiant scream from deep within, Sarah surged forward, feeling an incredible burst of warmth erupt in her chest, pushing past the fear that threatened to drown her love burning fiercely in the dark. Light cascaded around her, breaking through the edge of the forest, illuminating Max's form as he transformed under its embrace. His features finally softened, emerging from the twisted visage that taunted her moments before. "Mom?" he asked, uncertainty flickering in his eyes as shadows slithered back, retreating against this newfound radiance. Yes, I'm here. Just step toward me," she called, filled with fierce hope. Tendrils of darkness clawed at Max's legs, dragging him back, his figure flickering between light and shadow. But he hesitated, trapped between the lingering grip of the woods and the warmth of her voice. The forest trembled, but Sarah stood firm, remembering the pull of collective strength that they all shared in those moments of darkest despair. "Now, Max, come home," she shouted, an unyielding force erupting within her as she held her hands to the light, urging him on. "Mom!" he cried, and in a rush, he sprinted forward, diving into the embrace of the light, breaking the bonds that tried to hold him fast. With one final push, he broke free, launching himself toward her. And in that moment, the swirling shadows exhaled, shrieking in fury, collapsing around them. They landed on the ground, breathless yet safe as the light grew, surrounding them in a warm cocoon. Alone in the clearing, the haunting whispers faded like a bad dream, and the oppressive weight that threatened to crush them disappeared. "We did it," Sarah breathed, pulling Max close, feeling the warmth of his small body trembling against her. Derek and Jess burst through the tree line, their faces lit with confusion and relief. "Max!" Jess cried, racing forward to envelop him in a tight hug. "We thought we lost you." "I thought I lost you all," Max said softly, his voice trembling. "I was scared you don't have to be scared anymore," Derek affirmed, stepping closer, radiance brightening his usually worn features. "Together we'll always fight." And as they formed a circle, strong and whole once more, Sarah felt a surge of triumph swell in her chest. Though the woods loomed beyond the glade's edges, They had carved their own path through darkness with their unyielding love and strength. This was a victory, a testament to the resilience of their bond against the chaos that had threatened to tear them apart. Hand in hand, they stepped away from the shadows, toward a new day, where the sun's rays began to pierce through, heralding new hope even in realms that seemed irrevocably lost. Sarah turned back one last time to the woods, the whispers reduced to mere echoes, powerless now in the face of their collective courage. "You will be remembered," she declared softly, knowing it was not just a farewell, but a promise that they would never be forgotten. As they walked forward, realizing the shadows might always exist but would never again wield power over them, a new journey unfolded ahead, a story still being written, rich with possibilities and bound by love. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales that await. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let it know these stories matter. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. You need to share your thoughts with us. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this incredible journey ends.